You've heard the story, the greatest library in history lost in a single devastating fire. Centuries of knowledge gone in one night, said to set humanity back 1,000 years. It's one of the most repeated tragedies in all of history. There's just one problem with that story. Almost none of it is true. The Library of Alexandria was never destroyed in one great blaze. Its real fate is stranger, slower, and far more unsettling. This is what actually happened to the greatest library ever built. To understand its death, you first have to understand what it really was. It was not a quiet hall of dusty scrolls. It was something far bigger. Founded in Egypt over 2,000 years ago, under the Greek kings of Alexandria. It was the world's first great research institution, called the Mausion. Scholars lived there, paid by the kings, with one mission above all: to collect every book, every idea, all the knowledge in the known world. Some say its shelves held the wisdom of Greece, Egypt, Persia, and India. And they pursued that goal with breathtaking ambition. Every ship that docked in Alexandria was searched for scrolls. Any book found was taken, copied by hand, and the copy returned to the owner. The original was kept for the library's ever-growing shelves. They once borrowed Athens' official scripts of its greatest plays. They copied them, returned the copies, and simply kept the originals. At its height, it may have held hundreds of thousands of scrolls. It even had a fierce rival, a great library in the city of Pergamon. The kings of Egypt grew so jealous they banned the export of papyrus. Cut off from paper, Pergamon invented a new writing surface from animal skin. We still call it parchment today. Even a ban only spread knowledge further, and it became the beating heart of the ancient world's science. The greatest minds of the age came here to study, argue, and discover. Here, a scholar named Euclid wrote the rules of geometry we still use today. The brilliant inventor Archimedes is said to have studied here as well. Here, Eratosthenes did something almost unbelievable for his time. Using only shadows and math, he measured the size of the entire Earth. And he got it remarkably close to the true number. Another scholar, Aristarchus, proposed the sun was at the center of everything, almost 2,000 years before the world was ready to believe it. An astronomer named Hipparchus charted the stars into the first great star map. Doctors here studied the human body in ways no one had dared before. Here, too, ancient Hebrew scripture was translated into Greek for the first time. And a scholar named Callimachus built the first great catalog of books, a way to find any work among the endless rows of scrolls. Students came from across the world to learn at its feet. For centuries, this was the smartest place on the planet. So how could a place like this simply vanish? The story most people know begins with a war. In 48 BC, the Roman general Julius Caesar was trapped in Alexandria. Cornered by enemy ships, he made a desperate choice. He set the enemy fleet in the harbor on fire. But the flames spread from the ships to the docks along the shore. Ancient writers say scrolls stored near the harbor went up in smoke. And this is the fire everyone remembers as the end of the library. But here's what the legend leaves out. The library itself was not at the docks, and it survived. Scholars kept living and working there for centuries afterward. Years later, a Roman general even gifted Cleopatra 200,000 scrolls. The famous fire was real, but it did not destroy the library. The truth is far less dramatic and far more familiar. The library did not die in a moment. It died slowly over centuries. Its real lifeline was not stone walls, but money. The kings of Egypt had paid for everything it did. But those kings grew jealous, paranoid, and unstable. One ruler even expelled the library's scholars from the city. The brightest minds scattered across the Mediterranean, never to return. Slowly, the center of learning drifted to Rome, Athens, and beyond. Then Egypt fell under Roman rule, and the royal funding faded. And there was a quieter enemy working in the shadows. The scrolls were made of papyrus and papyrus rots. Every scroll had to be recopied by hand again and again to survive. That took an army of scribes and an endless supply of money. A library, it turns out, is not a building. It is a constant act of care. As the funding dried up, the copying slowly stopped. And one by one, the crumbling scrolls were simply lost. Each lost scroll took its knowledge with it, often forever. Then came more wars. A Roman emperor crushed a revolt in the city. The fighting wrecked the royal quarter where the library stood. Whatever was left was scattered, damaged, or quietly forgotten. There was no single villain, just decay, neglect, and time. But what about the other endings you may have heard? Part of the collection had been kept in a temple called the Serapeum, a magnificent shrine that held a daughter library of scrolls. In 391 AD, religious conflicts swept through the city. A mob destroyed the Serapeum, tearing the great temple down. But by then, historians think it held few books, if any. And there is one final story, the most famous of all, that centuries later, an invading army burned the books to ash. It's said they fueled the city's bathhouses for months. It's a vivid, haunting tale. It's also almost certainly a myth. It was first written down hundreds of years after it supposedly happened. By then, the great library had already been gone for ages. So what actually destroyed the Library of Alexandria? The unsatisfying truth is that nothing did, not in one blow. There was no single fire, no single night, no single villain. It was strangled slowly by lost funding and fading interest, by wars that chipped away at it and rulers who stopped caring, by fragile scrolls that no one was left to copy. And much of its knowledge was never truly unique. Many works survived in copies scattered across the ancient world. What was truly lost was the place itself and the dream behind it. The lesson is quiet, but it is one we forget at our peril. And that is what makes its fate so haunting. We imagine knowledge dies in a sudden dramatic blaze, but usually it dies in silence. Through neglect, through lost funding, through people who simply stopped caring. The greatest library in history didn't burn, it was forgotten. And that is a far more important lesson than any fire. Follow to see history the way it actually looked.